Brad Meltzer, 15 seconds to curtain, Brad Meltzer.
Joe, we're trying to make a book here.
Okay, fine. We'll just get right into the interview. All right, welcome to 15 Seconds to Curtain, a Muppet fan podcast presented by ToughPigs.com. This is the podcast where Muppet fans talk with notable Muppet fans about, what else? The Muppets. Our guest today is a #1 New York Times best-selling author of novels such as The Inner Circle and The Book of Fate. He's also appeared on the bestseller lists for nonfiction, advice books, children's books, and comic books. In the TV world, he hosts Lost History on H2 and Decoded on the History Channel. He's written about Jim Henson and the Muppets several times, most notably in the children's book, I Am Jim Henson. We are extremely proud to welcome Brad Meltzer to the podcast. Brad, welcome.
I can't tell you. I know this is silly, and everyone has to say these things, but you know that I'm a fan of the site and actually used it when we were going through things, and I was writing I Am Jim Henson.
Oh, thank you. That actually makes me feel really great. It's funny. We kind of work in a bubble. So over at Tough Pigs, and we sometimes don't really realize that other people are reading what we're writing. So it's especially nice to hear that someone notable like yourself is actually reading our ramblings.
I appreciate it. It makes us all feel less alone in the universe.
Yes, that's absolutely true. So my first question for you, Brad, can you tell me, it's a big one, what do you love about the Muppets?
So what do I love about the Muppets? I just think at the end of the day, the one thing I learned about making Muppets, and I went down to the Sesame Street workshop, and I took my kids down there, and obviously we worked with the Henson family when we were doing this book. But one of the things that, they taught me right when I first got there is they said the magic of every Muppet is you kind of put yourself into it, and the Muppet takes on who you are, and you're the spark. And when they let us put our hands in Muppets and showed us how to work the mouths and showed us how to do it, but they said the spark is you. And I think for me, it took me a long time. When I started the book, I was like, I just love the Muppets because they're cute and they're adorable, and who doesn't love that? And it's nostalgia and it's our childhood, but it's not that, and it was never that for me. And for me, I think it's all about what Henson put into Kermit the Frog, which is that laughing and imagining and sharing and dreaming and creating are things we should never stop doing them, right? It starts when we're kids, right? The famous line. But we should never stop being kind. We should never stop being a do-gooder. There's nothing wrong with being a do-gooder. And to me, that's what I love about them. It's not just that they remind me of my childhood, but I love that they stand for something good, and they stand for what I love to stand for, which is that you could use your creativity to put good into the world. Because when I was 5 years old, that's what Jim Henson and the Muppets taught me, is that you could use your creativity to put good into this world. And here I am, 40 years later, still just trying to do that, use my own creativity to put good into this world.
I love that, and especially I'm looking at your the I Am Jim Henson book right now in my hands, and on the back it says, "I will keep believing and keep pretending," which I appreciate that you've turned that a little bit into almost a mantra.
Yeah, what we do, everyone thinks of books, when we started this book series, it was so I could give my kids better heroes to look up to. And for me, we started with I'm Amelia Earhart and I Am Abraham Lincoln, and we did Rosa Parks and I'm Albert Einstein. But I always wanted to do I Am Jim Henson. And the books are never about history. On the back of every book, there is a moral value. And so on the back of I'm Amelia Earhart, it says, I know no bounds. On the back of I Am Abraham Lincoln, it says, I will speak my mind and speak for others. And as you just pointed out, on the back of I Am Jim Henson, it says, I will keep believing and keep pretending. And obviously, for anyone who knows their Muppets, you know what line we're taking and turning.
That's right. And this book was also kind of a continuation from your Heroes for My Son and of course, Heroes for My Daughter books. So you also wrote a whole chapter in your book just about Jim Henson.
The great part, the backstory of that chapter is, we had in the book, that one has 50 heroes, and Heroes for My Son, it has 50 different heroes. So it has everyone, Rosa Parks is in there too, but it has Abraham Lincoln, it has amazing people. And we put in John Lennon was in there, we had Mr. Rogers, and we had Jim Henson. And John Lennon's estate would not give us the music rights to Imagine. They just were like, you got to pay us money for it. I'd never done a children's book before. There was no budget. I said, please, can you do it? And they said no. And I said, you know what? They said, we'll only let you do it if we get to say what you write. And I said, you know what? To channel my inner John Lennon, screw you. Like, that's what John Lennon would say, screw you, you're never controlling what I write. And I went, and in the Jim Henson page, we used a line from Being Green. And it was obviously they needed Joe Raposo to sound off on it, who obviously had passed away. So they introduced, I contacted and found Nick Raposo. And I said, listen, we want to include, it's just one line, just one little stanza. And Nick was so nice. And he said, yeah, you know what? You can use it. Don't worry. And I just was like, isn't that exactly what you hope for from the Muppets? Like, just kindness as opposed to the crass commercialism.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I love that. And speaking of your communication with these companies, like what kind of participation did you get from Disney and Henson and Sesame to put this book together?
Yeah, so there were two things we really wanted when it came to this book. We wanted the Henson family because they know it best. I mean, we can all read the biographies and we can all read, there are great books out there. But I will tell you, Lisa Henson and the Henson family was so wonderful. Everyone was wonderful. And we actually got to meet multiple daughters. They were great. That's who actually, it wasn't even Lisa, but Cheryl, who took us to the Sesame Workshop. And Cheryl's become a dear friend. She's just like family to me now. And what I love about Cheryl is when we were working on the book and we were talking about Jim Henson's family and his grandmother and his grandfather, she was sending us photo references for Chris Eliopoulos, our amazing artist, so that as he was drawing them, they could be wearing what they really wore, that their houses could look just like their house. So suddenly our little kids book that was a biography of Jim Henson that was meant for the smallest kids out there had more real details than you could ever find in any biography, which was incredible to me because the family put in the effort on it. And so that was obviously part of it. The other part was the Walt Disney side. And obviously that took on the Sesame Street, they chimed in and were wonderful. But the Walt Disney side is that, it's a giant company that we were like, how is it going to be? Are they going to let us do it? And to their credit, they were incredible to work with. And they helped us with the rights issues. They helped us with the visuals. They helped us with references. And certainly you can see in the back of the book that one of the people we really thank is not just Nick Raposo, again, for letting us use his dad's song, but Karen Falk, who's the archives director of the Jim Henson Company. Karen was just incredible at sending references, at sending early photos, at sending childhood photos. She's like, I'm sending you things that we can't send out, you can't use these, but you need to know how to draw them. And she just couldn't be more pleasurable and wonderful to work with.
Yeah, we have similar relationship with Karen Falk in that she's really, really generous with her time. And when we say like, we got a question about this thing, like we found a photo, we don't know what it's from, and there's nothing we're gonna do with it. We just kind of want to know. And she's always very quick, and she gives us extra information, and she tells us where we can look, if we want to do more research on this, whatever it is. She's very, very generous with her time, and she's such a great asset for us.
Yeah, Karen is the secret weapon, right? We all know that you can have Disney, you can have the Henson Company, but Karen just has that institutional knowledge that every time I'd find two articles and I'd say, hey, here's conflicting information, which story's true, or here's the quote and which one's the right quote, and she would go hunting through pull out the original transcript. It was incredible.
Wow. Was there anything that you put into the book that they requested you change or take out?
No, I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that thing that was like, okay, tell us the thing we can't have. What's that wonderful thing you're going to crush our souls on? And the truth is I think everyone understood the mission. And even when we did the new book, the newest one we're doing is I Am Walt Disney, who was, if you think they take care of Jim Henson, watch what they do with Walt Disney. Mm-hmm. And they were sending it, I think, to like Walt Disney's family to sound off on. It had rights, there are likeness rights from Julie Andrews if we want to show Mary Poppins. I mean, old contracts just don't have the okay that the new ones do.
Of course, yeah.
And so I kept waiting for that thing that they were going to take away from us. And I think everyone understood that the mission for this was to show kids this amazing person named Jim Henson, this amazing person named Walt Disney, and bring them to life again. And I think when your mission is pure like that and it's for children, I think everyone's best nature comes out.
So this may be a stupid question, but your artist, Chris Eliopoulos, I assume he's also a big Muppet fan. Is that accurate?
Oh, my gosh, he's crazy. If you think I'm crazy, he's crazy. Like the two of us with this book, I mean, even for the last final, I always write these Chris is our secret weapon. And if Karen Falk is the secret weapon from the Henson Company, Chris is ours. And he has an art style. You know, any cartoonist can do cute, and any cartoonist can even do funny. But it's like the Muppets itself. Cute and funny only gets you so far. What really makes it work is heart. And heart is really hard. And that's what Chris does best. And so, you know, I always write these, you know, overly dramatic instructions of what to draw. And they always say, you know, I want this angle, and I want Jim Henson looking up at the sky, and the camera's in a worm's eye view, and so we can see just how grand this vision is as he looks up and imagines, and, you know, all these, taking myself far too seriously. And for the final spread of the book, I just wrote to him, draw everybody. Draw everybody. I want everybody. I want, you know, Oscar and Cookie Monster and Ernie and Bert and Big Bird, but I also want, you know, Fozzie, and I want Gonzo, and I want Doozers, and I want, you know, everybody. I want Fraggle Rock, and I want Emmett Jug Band Christmas, and I want, you know, and he just drew everybody. And I didn't have to say who it was. I didn't have to list anybody. He knew who everybody was.
That's great. I wonder, too, for someone like him who has such a specific style, he probably, I would assume, you know, would think to himself, well, I'm never going to get to draw the Muppets because they don't necessarily fit into my style. But here he's got this great opportunity where we can put Jim and the other human characters into his style, and then he can kind of translate his own versions of the Muppets kind of on Jim's arm or standing behind the puppeteers or whatever it is.
Right. And the weird thing is he can obviously, he draws Frank Oz, he draws Jim, he draws everybody in the book. And when he draws the Muppets, it's so interesting because he has to do kind of the caricature of what's already a caricature. So if it's funny when he always does the cover first, and the cover when he was drawing Kermit the Frog, it took him, I can't tell you how many tries until we found the right merger of his style and the real Kermit the Frog. Because if he drew it too much like the real one, then it doesn't fit. But if he draws it too much like himself, you're almost like, who's like, not that you wouldn't know who it is, but it just has to be kind of that perfect middle ground. And I think what Chris is so talented at is finding that perfect, lovable, heart-filled Kermit the Frog that just melts you.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, I'm hoping that you saw our review of it. But when I reviewed the book, I mentioned
it was the first review we got.
Was it?
You gave us you were the first review we got because I knew you got an early copy.
Oh, great!
And that was the one that mattered the most to me. Because listen, anyone who writes, we get really nice reviews and people tell us, oh, it's so wonderful what you're doing for kids, and I love that people are building libraries for their kids and their grandkids and nieces and their nephews. I love all that. But it's the people that I care the most about, as you know, are the people who care the most about it. And that always leaves that kind of sliver. And listen, we dealt with Jackie Robinson, and so you deal with people who love Jackie Robinson. We did Lucille Ball, who has a whole subculture that loves Lucille Ball. But Jim Henson was the first book in the whole series that we did where it was my love, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like, I'm not part of I Love Lucy, I Love Lucy, but I'm not part of I Love Lucy fandom. I'm part of the Muppet fandom. This is long before I did the book. There was a show called Celebrity Bucket List, and their definition of celebrity was clearly a little bit ridiculous because they included me. But
sure.
This was years before we ever did the book or contemplated the book. And they said, well, what do you want to do? People jump out of planes and they want to go to a Broadway show and they want to sing in public and they want to. And I said, they said, what's your bucket list item? I said, I only have one. And they said, what is it? I said, I want to go to Sesame Street. And they said, yeah, but that's going to be really hard. So can we just have you jump out of a plane? I'm like, no. I said, I don't want to be on the show if I can't go to Sesame Street. That's the only thing I want to do. And they're like, that's all you want to do? Your whole life, your bucket list? I said, that's all I want to do. And they're like, well, we don't know if we can pull it off. And then thanks to our friend Cheryl Henson, that was how I met Cheryl. She made it happen, and we did this whole episode where, I'm sitting there and I have my hand in Snuffleupagus as they're teaching me how to maneuver Snuffleupagus's eyes as opposed to his trunk. And,
wow.
With my kids operating the eyes and I'm operating the trunk, and it was one of the most insane moments of my entire life. And again, this was long before we ever did I Am Jim Henson. So that your review that day was like, this is from a site I know, a site I've been to. It mattered the world.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. But I mean, and for us, we've seen a lot of children's books come and go about Jim Henson, and the other biographers tend to focus too much on the work, and it's not about Jim Henson. It's about Sesame Street and the Muppet Show and the movies, and we just want to get those colorful characters onto the page. But I'm looking, and I didn't do a strict count, but it looks like it's about 20 pages into the book before before any Muppet show up.
And that's most of the book. Yeah, we don't get to it till the last quarter of it, because I was like, I want to talk about the history and what makes him great. What makes him great is not the work. What makes him great is how he got there. What makes him great are all the failures that came before. And what makes him great is, what he had to do at 16 years old looking for a job at local TV stations, or 18 years old cutting up his mother's coat. Those are the things that make you great. It's because that's what we all go through. We may not break Kermit the Frog, but we all are going to go through hardship. And everyone you look up to, whether it's Jim Henson or Frank Oz or anyone else, have moments where they were scared and terrified, and they didn't know if they were going to be able to go on, but they continue to go.
Absolutely. And I also found it fascinating that you didn't include his death into the story. And instead,
people ask us. Someone just went on my Twitter page, on my Twitter account, and said to me, I read I Am Amelia Earhart and I read I Am Jim Henson, and they say, you don't include his death. Why don't you include the death? And we put it in the timeline at the very end of the book, of course, but we never include it in the book. And the reason is these books are for really little kids. And if I say that he died and how he died, all little kids want to know is, tell me about his death. And to me, that's not why we remember Jim Henson. Why he died is inconsequential to what he achieved and who he was. The same way Amelia Earhart's crash, even though it's part of exactly why she was exploring, that's not what we celebrate when we celebrate Amelia Earhart. So it's a tricky one, but when you consider the audience, if I tell my kids, hey, this person died, all they want to talk about is their gruesome death. That's it.
Well, and it also really ties in with your theme that these stories don't end. There is no ending.
That's it.
And,
right.
Yeah, and
that's
by
it.
putting an end to his story really kind of affects affects the whole thing.
Yeah, and and at the end of the day, these aren't the stories of famous people. This is what we're all capable of in our very best days. And I want kids to leave the book charged up with that feeling that we all were when we were 7 years old watching The Muppet Show, or we were 11 years old, or whatever year you were when you found it, or Sesame Street. You want that sense of hope and inspiration. And that inspiration can't go on with a gruesome death.
And I really meant what I said in my review, that I believe, with all due respect to Brian J. Jones, this is probably the greatest Jim Henson biography written. It really just boils it down to.
I love that even more is because I'm friends with Brian, and
Sure.
There's nothing I would love more than saying that to him over and over again. Because his book is obviously, he was so helpful with ours, and obviously I love his book. I think it's a great biography of
Oh, absolutely.
But I love you for saying that.
It's a close second to yours, his biography. So, any chance you'd give us an I Am Frank Oz or an I Am Carol Spinney, anything like that?
I met Carol when he was here in Florida a couple of years ago, and it was one of my great joys is to go up and say thank you. And the book hadn't come out yet; we were still working on it. And he was at an event, one of the Comic-Cons that was local. That everyone's there for to meet Will Shatner and to meet whatever famous person from Star Wars or Star Trek is there. And Carol Spinney is sitting there at his little table. And he has to have a little sign that says who he is, but not to me.
Of course,
and that's who I went and spent my time with, was with him. And he just couldn't be sweeter and nicer to my sons. And we just had an incredible time with him. So obviously, we still haven't done I Am Nelson Mandela. We got a couple more people to do, but I would love to eventually, I still want to do Joan Gans Cooney.
Oh, God, that'd be amazing.
I want to, and that's why we mentioned her by name. John Stone and Joan are both mentioned by name in the book. Because we all celebrate these big, the big person, but one of the great things that someone said about Jim Henson, and that I truly believe is his superpower, it wasn't the puppeteering that was his great power. It was actually finding the best work in people and pulling it out of them. He was this incredible, and I realized that's where he becomes the most like Kermit the Frog, right? Is that he's surrounded by, all these people who have all these different talents and all this chaos. And yet he's this kind of calm at the storm that kind of tells everyone the show's got to go on, right? Just like the beginning of the podcast, right? There's 15 minutes to go. Let's go. And in the midst of all that chaos is Jim Henson. In the midst of all that chaos is Kermit the Frog. And I think, to me, you can't possibly do a book for him where you don't mention all those collaborators. It's why one of those pages in there you'll see we purposely show, even though, whether it takes the magic or not, we show all the puppeteers and we draw them all. It was hard to label every single name in there, but if you look, you'll see them all. We Chris drew every single person because I feel like that's what Jim Henson was so good at, is finding all these amazing people and arming them with something to really release that creativity.
Absolutely. So I want to ask you real quick about your, I've noticed you've done a lot of really great advocacy projects, including you helped to find the 9/11 flag that was raised at Ground Zero. You helped to raise funds to repair Jerry Siegel's house, the creator of Superman, which, by the way, I'm a Cleveland native, so that one was really touched home for me, so thank you for that. Is there anything that you can do to help convince Disney to release the full Muppet Show on DVD? Because that's right up there with the 9/11 flag, in my opinion.
So wait, I'm confused. The original? You mean the original?
So the Muppet Show, Disney released the first 3 seasons of the Muppet Show on DVD, and
right, it's only the first 3. They didn't do them all.
That's right. So there's 2 seasons left, and we've been waiting a decade.
I have the box set, right? That's right, because I have the box set. We played that Elton John DVD about 1,000 times. My kids used to love watching the Crocodile Rock.
Sure.
That's right, but it's not all of them. You're right. Oh my gosh, we got to get working on that.
All right, I'm putting you to task. That's next for you.
That's actually a good one. And do we know why? I actually don't know why.
Oh, we've heard lots of different reasons. It could be music rights. It could be, DVD sales. It could be celebrity likenesses. Who knows? In any case, it's Disney. They have the capability to do anything that they want. I mean, they have the money for it. They have the power, and they have this new Disney Plus streaming service.
We got to find an answer. We need an answer.
All right, great. All right, next time we talk, Brad, I'm here to help you for it too.
I appreciate it. Well, yeah, one of my favorite ones that we did, we always obviously take our profits and donate them to good causes. We got the sponsor and the big Henson exhibit. They let us sponsor Big Bird, bring in Big Bird there for the refurbishing of Big Bird. And that was, it's one thing to, if you go to the Cleveland airport, you'll see this big statue of Superman that's on it, and my wife and I helped sponsor that.
Oh, yeah, I love that. I take a photo every time I'm there.
And you'll see my name on there if you look real close, but sponsoring Big Bird, that was, come on, man, that was a highlight.
Oh, that's great. So, do you ever get mistaken for Dr. Bunsen Honeydew on the street?
I wish I did more. I feel like I have the hair.
Right, or the
I
lack
got the
thereof.
look. I told my daughter I wanted to do it for Halloween, and I just need a beaker, right? You can't do it without a beaker. But I feel like I got to put on a little more weight for a honeydew.
Oh, fair. That's a good reason to have extra dessert, though.
Although I bet with a little orange mop top, I do a good beaker also. But yeah, honeydew is definitely my hairstyle.
All right, so we're gonna wrap up soon, but I do wanna ask real quick. Actually, I'm curious before I get to my last couple of questions. What form does your fandom take now? So, how often do you watch Muppet content? How do you find Muppet content? What are you watching?
Yeah, I think let me answer thoughtfully and not quickly. And I'm trying to think of all levels. So there's 2 things that are going on at the same time. So one is what I show my kids, which is all YouTube and all the kind of old stuff. And then obviously we have when my kids were really little, it was all the DVDs. It was the original Muppet Show 3 DVDs. That was what we lived by. YouTube definitely took over. And we also had this great, I think it was probably the 25th anniversary DVD that had all the songs. So it had just a lot of good Sesame Street stuff all in one place.
Yes. I
would say now the new thing that's going to launch in November is we're doing a show on PBS of our kids' books.
Oh, great!
And it's called Xavier Riddle in the Secret Museum. It stars a little boy named Xavier, his sister Yadina, and their best friend Brad, the most handsome cartoon character ever drawn, who looks just like me. And they basically have a problem. They're being bullied. They go back in time. They have a secret museum that takes them back in time to meet Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks says to them how to deal with bullies and teaches them how to deal with bullies. They come back and they deal with a bully. And that's every episode. They go back in time and meet a different hero. And the fun to me is that we are launching Xavier Riddle 50 years and 1 day after Sesame Street premiered on PBS.
Wow.
So they launched so we are November 10th of this year. And so my content and my consumption of that has been a lot of visits to PBS lately and a lot of kind of fun stuff to see behind the scenes there, usually mostly photos and old pictures more than the live stuff. So those are the two ways I'm really consuming. And then the odd new way is, and you can see it, please join our Facebook or our Twitter page or Instagram, is because of I Am Jim Henson, there are teachers all across the country that now do lesson plans using the book, and they all make homemade puppets. They all kind of do these different homemade puppets, and I love that our Instagram feed and our Twitter feed is always showing every once in a while, especially now that the school year started, we'll get all these different new Muppets that are taking form from the books, which is just maybe the most rewarding of all.
All right, so last question for you, just because it didn't come up in conversation. Who is your favorite Muppet?
My favorite Muppet is, listen, Kermit is, always Kermit, so I feel like that's not even fair. I love Ernie because Ernie's laugh reminds me of my mother. The guy who does Boomerang Fish.
Yeah, Lou Zealand.
Yeah, Lou Zealand always makes me laugh. It just is easy. The voice just makes me laugh every time. But I think my favorite Muppet, if you take away the Ernies and the Kermits and the obvious ones, it's Emmett Otter. Emmett Otter is my guy.
Oh,
I watch
wow.
Emmett Otter. Emmett Otter just undoes me. The songs, all of it. And I love seeing Jim Henson on the kazoo because you can just feel, even in a tiny little side part, you can feel him crushing this little tiny role that they give to Jim Henson. But Emmett Otter just has so much heart, and that one just always undoes me.
Oh, that's a great answer. I love that. I love that you have a love for Emmett Otter, which is it's one of my favorites. I'm sure most people who are listening to this is one of their favorites as well. So, great choice.
Last year for my birthday, my sister bought me, because she knew my love of it. She bought me a first edition of the original Emmett Otter book that it was
nice.
based on, and that was just a beautiful gift.
Oh, that's a good one. Wow. Well, Brad, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being a Tough Pigs reader. That's a real treat for me. And really, thank you for all the work that you've done for fans of Jim Henson, new fans of Jim Henson, and putting these books out. I really hope that everyone out there goes and checks out I Am Jim Henson, as well as I'm Walt Disney, which by the time this podcast is released will be in stores. So, Brad, thank you so much for being here.
And listen, thanks for what you do for all of us who are just fans of this every day. It means more than you can realize.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Before we get to the credits, Brad wanted me to remind you that his latest book, I Am Leonardo da Vinci, will be in stores on April 14th. Be sure to check it out to learn more about the guy who painted the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, all while fighting ninjas in the sewer. I may need to read the book myself. And if you want something a little less all ages, Brad's book, The First Conspiracy, a nonfiction story of the secret society that tried to kill Abraham Lincoln, will be in stores May 5th. And now, on with the credits.
15 Seconds to Curtain is hosted and produced by Joe Hennis.
Edited by Jared Fairclough.
Logo artwork by Dave Haltine and Jay Fosgate.
Written by Gags Beasley and the Hat Rack.
Theme music by Stacey Rosen.
A Muppet Fan podcast brought to you by toughpigs.com.